Welcome back to the podcast. Today we've got Brad Huebner on, a coach, a leading expert in how to grow your community, right? We're going to talk about things that entrepreneurs know, but mess up every day, holding the accountability for who you are in business. Brad, let's get at it. Welcome.
Absolutely. Thanks, Anthony. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
When we talk about you're 100% responsible for everything that happens in your business, I think entrepreneurs, you hear that, but they don't feel it, know it, and kind of put that into a place that it serves them, right?
Absolutely. I've said as many times, anything that happens in your business and your life for that matter is 100% your fault, right? Now, a lot of this came from, I don't know if you read the book, from Jocko Willink, Extreme Ownership.
That's right. Yep.
That's kind of where that originated for me. And then, I just adopted that into my whole business. And I believe it 100%. I believe everything that happens is your fault.
Well, in today's victim mentality, oh, those guys did it to me. Oh, she did it to me. Oh, my ex-wife, my banker, my tax accountant, the government. Yeah. People want to sit there and play this game that I'm victim to the world. And the truth, I feel like there's no agency in that, right? When I play victim to the world and the things that happen here, the gift is I have no agency. I'm stuck. It's kind of the sad place to be.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And I think, with social media and all what we see, it's made it worse. You know what I mean? Before, when you really weren't connected to the outside world, you didn't know whether or not other people were struggling or had the same scenario. It was just you and your small world that you lived in every day. And so, I hear a lot of times with contractors, it's it's not my fault that my guy showed up late. I'm like, well, did you hire them? Because I'm pretty sure that's on you. That's your responsibility. You hired them, right? So even if truly it's not something that's in our control that happened to us, we can control how we react to it, right? And so that is it's still 100% on us to deal with that situation.
The hardest thing for me to get as a contractor, I was victim to the people that work for me, the subs that worked for us, and for a long time, this business is plagued with it just the way it is. It's kind of like an acceptance. It becomes a way of being. And, that really was frustrating. In fact, it made it to a point where I didn't want to be in the business. After 20 years of doing this, today I really realize if we go backwards, those guys not showing up on the job site on time, I really get how I hold accountability for that, right? And there's like, here, and we can go the other way, talk about that part you were talking about, hey, how I deal with it. But if I really go look at, all right, how am I accountable? If let's just play the game that I'm accountable for the guys not showing up on job site. How could I be accountable? What could I do about it?
That's one, you got to have a conversation with them, right? Like,
that's right.
Do you tolerate it? If I hear this too. I mean, I've had this conversation just in the past week where, some of my clients have employees that are really good craftsmen. They can do anything. And so because of that, because they're skilled, but maybe they don't have those EQ skills or not, they have a little bit of drama at home and things that they bring with them. They're too afraid to approach them or to get rid of them because, it's a skilled position. And you and I both know that skilled positions, it's hard to find people that can fill those positions. So a lot of times we actually become, the victim of our own business that we created because we're too afraid to have that conversation. A lot of my clients are, and this is, we can get into it a little bit later, but, I kind of see people divided into two categories where you have kind of the people pleasers of the world that are really just trying to make everyone happy, right? And then you have the people that are more of the go-getters that kind of all the opposite side of that, like they'll just burn through people and they don't care about relationships. And, so the people pleasers kind of get doormatted, right? Like they just let their employees run over them as long as they treat them treat them nice. And so it's everyone's in a different spot in their business, and you got to be able to figure out what your strengths and weaknesses are and then make sure that you can use those in your business. But I want to take a step back. The very beginning of this is awareness. If you don't have awareness of what's happening in your business and your life, then you don't know what to fix.
That's right. I mean, like not having that it's like the alcoholic. If I can't admit that I have a problem, right? I never am going to get to the 12 steps, and then I can never find the solutions to get my life in order. All of those, or if you're, you're struggling with something, until I really admit that I've got an issue and I'm accountable for what's happening here. I can't see it. I love that, right? But you have to get there and go, all right, what is my want? My want is for people to show up on a job site and be successful. Right. And if I could dissect that not showing up, and how many times is it my fault where I set them up to do that, right? They don't have a van. They don't have the materials. They got to go running around the Home Depot. They got 17 things to do. The craftsmen that we need to do the work that we need on a job site, we need that person's a craftsman. We need all of their skills delivering the craft work. And I've got him going to Home Depot 17 times this morning. And by the time he even gets to the job site, frustrated, worn out, exhausted, and mad at me, and now he's has to face a customer.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest. I love a good run to the store to get materials, right? I mean, who doesn't as a contractor? Sign me up. If I could go to the store all day and drive and then look at the tools while I'm there for 10, 15 minutes and daydream about this new drill or new saw. I mean, I'll do that all day long. I love doing that stuff. But does that get the job done, right? Is it going to put money in the bank and food on the table? No, it's not.
No, it's looking at like Jocko talks about the way they pack their bag, the way the gas in the truck. When he talks about going on a military exercise and being extracted from safety zone and going out to do a mission and knowing that at any given time what's going to come at me, I have no idea, and taking complete ownership in every turn, every inch, every weapon, every armor, what the men wear, what the people bring, what they have what they have to go out there. That what are all the things that could possibly happen to my people along this mission, right? And the way he talks about that really does give us, all right, how are we sending our people out? I mean, seriously, construction literally is a mission, right? Every day our warriors go out to fight the battle for us and make us money, right? I mean, at the end of the day, those craftsmen are the ones you count on, or I count on, to make us money. And without their craftsmanship, the chances of me making money are slim. It's going to be difficult.
100%. And so I think what you're kind of touching up against, and I think this is, correct me if I'm wrong here, Anthony, but we're talking about like servant leadership. Right. Sure. And that term, definitely people don't like that. Well, these people work for me. I'm the boss and they work for me. And it's like, no, you don't understand what that means. Your job as the owner, as the boss, as the manager, is to make sure that your team has everything they need to do their job to the most effective, capability they have, whether that's tools, whether that's training, whether that's encouragement, whatever it is. Your job is to make sure they have it, right? And a lot of times, let's be honest, a lot of contractors are accidental entrepreneurs, right? They start their construction business because they got fired and they didn't know what else to do, or they thought they could do better than their boss, whatever it is. A lot of them become accidental entrepreneurs, and there's nothing wrong with that, but they stay stuck with the employee mindset. Right. They stay stuck as an employee thinking that like they work for the customer and whatever the customer wants, they're supposed to do. And then on the backside of that, when they become a manager or owner or the boss, they don't realize that you have to develop leadership skills. You have to develop management skills, right? You have to develop all of these things. We're not born with those. No. You have to work on those. And, it's like, well, I'm the best, carpenter in my town, and that should be all I need to do. And it's like, no, that's just the bare minimum to actually do what you do. Now you have to learn sales. Now you have to learn marketing, or you have to learn people skills, or you have to learn, whatever else, leadership and management, like all of those things you have to learn in order to be an effective boss, manager, owner.
I mean, today to be in business, you are great carpenter. Love it. You're a great carpenter. That's a great go-to. But that doesn't even scratch the surface of now I need to be an HR expert. I've got to be a social media expert. I've got to be an accounting expert. I literally go through and look at equipment storage and material supplies, and I've got to create a purchasing team. The idea that I get to just show up and do carpentry work is great. And maybe look, if I want to be a one-man band, if I want to be a one-man band, me and my tools, and I check to check with a customer, that might be a great way to start. But most of us want to create a revenue stream. And by the way, that's not a company. That's just a job, right? I mean, to be a one-man band and go out and do work, that's really just you bought yourself a day, a job by job by job for each customer. That's not really a company. To grow a company that's self-sustaining and it produces revenue for you, and something that offers us the ability to have growth and longevity, because I mean, how many of us can work with our tools for the rest of our lives? I mean, just at some point we get so worn out, it's just not sustainable.
No, 100%. And I think, and I know you are not saying this, but just to clarify, like, we're not saying there's anything wrong if you want to be a one-man band and you want what I call a lifestyle contractor.
Yeah.
The plumber that I used, he was a one-man band. He worked like 30 hours a week, made over 6 figures, and that's what he wanted. And kudos to him. And you can definitely do that. But if you do want to grow, if you do want to scale or build a business that's beyond you on the tools, then you're going to have to make some changes, right? You're going to have to invest in yourself through, like I said, leadership, training, and all that. And we're not saying either that like you have to know how to do HR and have to do all the accounting, but you definitely need to have a general understanding of it so that you can hire people to do that part and still know what's going on. Like there's still a minimal investment or requirement of knowledge in those areas, but that doesn't mean you have to be the one that does all those things either.
Look, we get there, but as we grow the company, I mean, I certainly started, 28 years ago with me in my basement, and begging for jobs, and we had an old dining room table that used to be in my living room. My wife upgraded to a better table, so we put that one down in the basement, and I sat at one end. I had one project manager sat on the other end, and we had an assistant who sat between us, and the three of us sat at one old wooden dining room table that we had for years, and that was how we started. And together, we kind of took some different parts on, but as we start to grow, and today, the multiples, if you want to grow that company past that and start to get to some numbers that. Right. And by the way, that's a choice. So I always tell people, check in with yourself. Look, if you love your tools and you love the stress, the ability to, turn off when you go home at night, stay where you're at and enjoy that. Love it. It's actually a wonderful place to be. But if you want to grow and get off the tools and go somewhere next, you got to be willing to take some steps and grow and try on some new stuff that's going to scare the crap out of you.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's funny. I don't know if you know this or not, but I was actually in the military. I did 4 years in the Marine Corps. Right. And, so that you were talking earlier about Jocko Willink going on missions, it definitely resonated with me. But I went into the military after high school because I was done with school. Like I did not want to learn anything else,
Same.
But the funny part of that is I didn't realize that, in boot camp, 13-week boot camp, it's like an accelerated college program of learning that you have to learn. And so after I got out of the military, it was the complete opposite. I wanted to learn nonstop. I just wanted to consume and learn. And I still remember, and I still have it, but I had the first CD on audio, audiobook on CD. It was Tony Robbins' Lessons in Mastery. And, I listened to that as like 6 CD set. And he talked about Kanai, constant and never ending improvement. And like I adopted that. That was me. That's what I wanted to do. And ever since then, that was in 2000-ish, 2001, for the last 24 years, that's just been my mantra, constant and never ending improvement. I still invest I have business coaches. I still invest in training. I still go and get more education. And so it's like, I think a lot of blue collar people are like, well, I'm a master carpenter, I'm a master plumber, master electrician, whatever. There's really nothing else for me to learn. Now I just need to hire people that go do the work. And it's like, really, you just started. Like you've just started the learning process. And so now you have to, now you have to elevate. You have to move up the learning ladder, if you will.
It blew me away, the things that I had to learn, and I like what you said when you go back to school, because school for me was miserable. It sounded like the Peanuts, wah 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 wah,
Yeah.
right? But it wasn't that I didn't love learning. It just, the way you learn. I don't want to sit there and try to rote memorize, every one of the rules and get me into English and I before E except after C, unless you're holding a chicken and it's Wednesday. Like those things, it didn't resonate with me. But you put me in front of information today, I suck it up. I mean, the books I read, the travel I do, I thirst for knowledge. And I really do believe that most humans are the same way. We want to learn, right? And those who want to grow a business, when we get scared and go, I just want to stay a one-man band, or, hey, I don't want to grow, that's too much. That resistance to growth is usually a pretty good sign that there's some work to do there. Like, what's holding me back? Because even though it's going to be hard, I think humans have proven throughout history we can do really hard things. It's not, jumping the mountain in one jump. It's, it's a matter of a bunch of steps to get there. And even though I get frustrated, I feel like if the gift is from entrepreneurs who've made it already, to look back and go, look, you're going to be okay. Yeah, you're going to feel stupid, and it's okay to feel stupid. We all did. I still feel stupid. Every time I break a new paradigm, a new place, a new idea, I have to step into stupid for a minute, and it's okay.
I mean, one of the things that probably unlocked the biggest lesson, or unlocked the potential for me, was being vulnerable, learning to be vulnerable. Ask the stupid question, sit in the front of the classroom. What do we all want to do? We all want to sit in the back of the classroom and joke around, and don't pick me. Don't ask me any questions. I don't want to look stupid in front of my peers. But that's how you learn the most. Yeah. And in my coaching program, we do live sales training. And so whenever we get on there, we'll do role plays. And so there may be 20, 15, 20, 30 contractors on there, and we'll have two of them role play customer and contractor. And that's very intimidating when you have, 20 other people that know what you're supposed to do, and they're judging you. But that's when you learn the most, when you put yourself out there in a safe environment, where people are encouraging you. That's when you learn the most. So being vulnerable and putting yourself out there, and don't get me wrong, I still don't like it. I don't like being vulnerable. I don't want to make mistakes in public, but that's usually when we learn the most, when we have the biggest leap forward in learning.
I mean, Will Smith used to say, and before he smacked everybody, he used to say, I used to love his line. He used to say, everything amazing's on the other side of scaring the crap out of ourselves. And I always loved that line. To me, if I knew then what I know now, that what I'm about to go through, the things that I'm going through that scare me, every entrepreneur wakes up at 3:00 in the morning worried about something. Oh my God, there's some voice in our head that's scaring the crap out of us. I call him Fred, right? I call Fred in my head. He wakes me up at 3:00 worrying about this. What about that? What about this guy? That's going to happen. Is it going to happen? Right? That's the part of us that know, it's scared, they're afraid. But if I knew then that it's going to be okay, that all of this is happening for a reason. The things that are happening throughout our business are places to just trust that I'm going to learn something from this, that, a customer who goes bad or doesn't pay us, or, look, one of the first contracts I ever had, I was a small painting contractor, and I worked for this old man, old Italian guy, right? And he would talk like this. I always thought, send him back. He's got a freaking leak, right? When he would talk to me, Anthony, he would call me Tony. Tony, it'd take forever to talk to the guy. But he nailed me pretty bad for, I painted this house on the Intercoastal in Florida. And he's like, you're going to do it by the paint specifications. And I way undercharged him, because he took out the specifications afterwards, and he made me get one of those millimeters, and he went around on a stucco house that, it's all, and just busted my I had 5 coats of paint on this house before I knew what I was doing. And, but I learned how to write a contract. I learned how to figure out a scope of work, right? Although I was mad and it hurt, and financially I didn't make any money on it, the best learning I got out of it was I now knew, all right, if I'm going to do this, is it one coat of paint and here's how this is going to be applied? And I could figure out scope, and then I could write a contract a little bit differently. There was a learning from that. I couldn't have gotten to school.
Yeah. Well, and then what I run across too, and that's usually how we learn, right? Like we make a mistake and then we don't do it again. And I heard this one time. It's like mistakes are repeated until we learn them, and they typically get harder and harder each time, right? But the other side of that coin, I deal with this a lot. It's like working with a client or a contractor, and they're like, "Hey, does anybody, do you guys have a clause in your contract for like how to deal with a dog bite?" And I'm like, well, how often has that happened? I mean, I've been bit twice by dogs on the job site, but how often has that happened? Well, it's never happened. I just want to have something in there in case it does. And so the opposite side of that is I'm going to worry about everything, and I'm going to try and perfect everything, and I want to have every perfect clause. And now you end up with like a 50-page contract with all these clauses just in case something happens. Like you can't do that either. Like you can't have this perfect. Try to avoid problems, try to avoid, mistakes and failure. It's in my opinion, it's better to have the failure and then make an adjustment than it is to try and prevent the failure from happening in the first place. Perfection
is the killer of growth. The idea that somehow or another, I'm not going to move forward until I have a contract that has, if God farts today and says it's going to rain, and then tomorrow the dog's going to bite me, or paint turns inside out. There's no possibility of doing it. Finding that space that goes, look, I'm going to get enough, right? And you'll know what enough is. I mean, you're at a gut level, we know what enough is. Now, you may fail and you go, hey, I want to make sure I add that in, or I want to, in my next agreement, I'm going to make sure I put that in there. You learn from it. But the part that I tell people, stop, your perfectionism is killing your ability to grow. And I understand why you're doing it. That's, if you really boil it down, go to the underlying reason what's really happening. You're afraid, right? And that fear is stopping you. And you're going to have to step boldly into this agreement with somebody, and create some trust, and create a relationship with your client. And I think when you do that, ultimately, we just had a $300,000 miss where we misbilled. We are on our fault. For a year and a half, we had this client that we were underbilling. There was a mistake in one of our billing systems. We have this reoccurring revenue from a client, and we were off by a few $1,000, but it added up to $350,000. Right? Think about that. I mean, now I got to go back to that customer and go, hey, we got it audited. The auditors went through it and found a $350,000. But the idea is there's fear in having that conversation because you look stupid. Yeah. But I feel like we have a relationship with them that, because we who we are and where we've been with them, it's a conversation that will go through. It will go through. Now, look, I may or may not get the money back, maybe not, and I don't want to ruin the relationship because of it. But at least I feel like the integrity of our relationship will allow me to sit at a table and have a conversation properly.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I see that too with the whole contract stuff. But I think at the end of the day, it all comes down to communication, like being able to communicate. And this might be a new direction to talk about, but effective communication really is way more important than having a very specific clause in your contract that's going to prevent that. Because, I mean, let's be honest, contracts are only in place until, after stuff goes wrong. It's like when stuff goes the way it's supposed to, you don't even need the contract, basically. But when stuff goes wrong, that's when we have the contracts to protect ourselves. And, I remember one time I did a job for a friend of mine. He was a high school friend of mine, and he became a very successful business owner. But he wanted, I was putting in a like underdeck system for under your deck to dry it, to have a water, to dry it out underneath there and have a waterproof area. And I had never done one before, but I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll try it. It'll be fun, whatever. So I bid the job, and I forget the dollar amounts, but it was like $8,500, way underbid it. But it was a learning, something I wanted to start doing these. So at the end of the job, because of overruns and miscalculations and stuff, I was under it would cost me like $9,000 just to break even. And the job was like 8,500. Right. And so I went to him and his name was Paul. I said, Paul, look, here's the deal. I bid it this much. This is what I need. I will 100% honor the contract, $8,500, but 9,000 or whatever the dollars were, this is what I need to even break even. And he's like, no problem. And he wrote me a check for the 9,000 or whatever, because he was a good guy. He wasn't trying to take advantage of me, and he understood what was going on. But it was a learning lesson, but also realizing that like having that communication, if I would have just sent him an invoice for $500 more than what the estimate was, and I didn't tell him what was going on, that probably would not have resulted in the same way. But just coming to him and like just the situation you're talking about, you're going to talk to your client, you're going to ask him to pay the bill. But, if they come back and say, hey, that's your problem, not mine. I mean, are you going to take them to court and sue them and go through that whole rigmarole? Probably not. But it's a learning lesson, and there's a lot to be taken out of that.
I will tell every time someone comes to me and says, I got to go sue this person, I'll tell them every single time, the only people that win in those scenarios are the lawyers, right?
Yeah, it's not worth it.
It's just not worth
negative energy. You even if you win, you lose.
That's right. Just the amount of anger and frustration and time, it becomes another distraction, right? Yeah. And I think let's go to that one real quick, because I think this is another one that I think it's valuable to talk about, is that as I set up a business, as I start to grow a company, I have these distractions that either I create myself for, mm-hmm. I've kind of noticed that I can create, like you were talking about going to Home Depot. You get me to Home Depot, go look at tools. I can spend an hour doing that. And I know that, look, if I really want to be effective, I want to get in and out of this project. The faster I can get that part and get it back to that job site, get that thing done and move on to the next project, it's great. But maybe I intentionally or unintentionally distract myself. And it could be at Home Depot. It could be with dealing with a lawsuit that I'm mad at somebody. But if I really look at what happened on the project, I can hold myself accountable, right? Like one of the biggest lines I've ever learned in business is, how could this be my fault? Right? As mad as I get at a customer, how could I be accountable for what happened? Right? Like I didn't know what I was doing. Like you were talking about, I didn't know the product. I'm starting a new area. Right. Like I did with that guy with the paint. I didn't know it. Right. But if I really want to step back, right? Because a real gift is in being accountable. Right. Because if I'm a victim to what happened, there's no gift there. Right. The gift of, what I mean by gift is, there's no learning. There's no possibility of creating a better company or a better way of being. If I take that accountability on, now all of a sudden I've got this gift that says, all right, I didn't communicate with this customer properly. I didn't know the product I was building. We were doing varnish on someone's boat once. And, some multimillionaire said, hey, I'd like to hire you guys to come do varnish. I had never done varnish on a boat. We were painters. Yeah. And he's like, come do my boat. And I went to Home Depot and came back, and my guy was there with a scraper, scraping off the varnish. He probably had 70 layers of varnish or 50 layers of varnish on there built up, right? And it was supposed to be just a scratch and revarnish.
Oh, man.
But my guy just, he was used to paint, and he thought, let's get it back down to bare wood, and we'll build up from there. I came around the corner, and that customer almost tore my head off. I'm like, oh my God. And I just left for a few minutes, and to go get some better sandpaper. We need a better grit of sandpaper, and I come back, and the guy had just, he had his hands, and it probably took me 3 months to get that thing built up, to get that guy happy. But I was committed to it. What ended up happening, we ended up building a great relationship with the guy. It was like, hey, we told you we didn't know what we were doing. We were painting his house, and he asked us to do this varnish work. And I should have, known better than that. And the guy I left here that was a laborer, he didn't know. So I held I got accountable for it. And all of a sudden I communicated, hey, I'll make it right. And we built this great relationship. He actually invited me on a fishing trip with him. We ended up going down to Aruba, and I'm like, this is great. Right? You went from something that was awful, terrible, thought, I'm going to end up in court and lawsuit, and end up building a relationship with a guy who, for years, we were friends until he died.
Yeah. Well, and how many times do you see that same scenario happen and the contractor is like, this person's unreasonable. Like this person is just crazy, you know, no accountability, no responsibility. Like in that scenario, you probably agree, like you shouldn't have agreed to do the boat job because like you said, you didn't know you'd never done it before. But, you know, a lot of times, and let's be honest, a lot of contractors have bad reps, you know, because they do stuff like that. They take money, they take on jobs they can't do, they commit to timelines they know they can't finish on because they're afraid to lose work and, you know, all of these things. But to your point, like you made a mistake, you owned up to it with integrity. You're like, we'll make it right. And because of that, he saw that you were a person of integrity and you built an amazing relationship. So in the end, you know, would you want to go through that scenario again?
No,
Probably
no,
not. Probably
it was
not.
not. It cost me lots of weekends. I mean, I went there every weekend myself and had to go through this because I just couldn't trust anybody else to do it. And I wanted it done right. And there. But as I look backwards, what a great lesson it was, right? To your point, learn to say no. Look, I've made more money saying no than saying yes. Right. But when you're a kid and I was maybe 19 years old when I did that. Right. I was maybe 20, you know, money, you know, I was trying to make payroll. Right.
Yeah.
So you make, sometimes you get motivated by money and you make some stupid decisions. And, today, I think one of the biggest gifts is, you know, as you start to grow an organization, you know, your organization does well. You know, your business does well. And if you want to be that, you know, $100 million, company, if you want to go from, you know, 100,000 to, to 100 million, you're going to learn a lot to get to make those, to continue to grow. And let's go to the next topic and really talk about the leader as the bottleneck.
Always. Yeah. You're always the bottleneck as a leader in your business. You know, I mean, I'm not a billionaire. I will admit that. But if you talk to or see a lot of billionaire interviews, almost all of them will tell you that the way they got there was by hiring people way smarter than them.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like, in a sense, they are the dumbest person in the room, and everyone around them is way smarter. And I believe that 100%. But I think in the blue collar trades, I can tell you the number one problem that all blue collar people deal with, and that's ego. Like, it's just complete ego. That's what keeps people stuck. And so, you know, the idea of like, if I'm a master carpenter, hiring a lead guy to come in and take my spot on the tools, and, you know, he's a carpenter, but, you know, he's not going to be as good as me. But the reality is he might be better than you. Like, he might actually be better than you. And what's more important, like you being the best carpenter, or you actually getting off the tools and having someone competent enough to do it and let them do it their way? You know, you're not there telling them, well, that's not how we install doors, and that's not how we do this, and that's not how we, you know, like that stuff doesn't matter. Like, as a leader, your job is to bring out the best in them, because it's going to benefit you on the back end. So you have to put your ego in check, right? And sometimes you actually have to let your team fail, even though you know that they're going to fail, even though you know that maybe their way of doing it is not the most efficient way or the most, you know, the highest quality way, but letting them do that and almost creating teachable moments in that, so that you can, one, either let them fail and realize on their own, right? Because like we're talking about learning through failure, but two, also, you can't be there all the time. This is how the guys that are like, hey boss, you know, we took the trim off, and there's a mold behind there. What do you want us to do? Right? Hey boss, we ran into a problem. What do you want us to do? Hey boss. And like, all you've done is train them to call you every time there's a problem. And that's not leadership. That's, you know, that's just you not giving up control because you're afraid of the ego is protecting you from that failure aspect, from the customer yelling at you or whatever it might be. I don't know, but that ego is really the biggest problem that we have as leaders.
Complete ego. And you know, I had a business coach. She comes in one day and she goes, all right, today, she's a beautiful, beautiful woman. She's kind of tall, she's red hair, big red lips. And she comes in and she's a business coach. And she goes, she goes to my office. Today, we're going to lock you in your office, and we're going to keep that door shut all day long. You know, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, this is great. She's gonna, you know, I get to focus. You know, I have an open door policy. People come by the door all day, and I'm like, oh, great, I can focus. She goes, no. we're locking you in. I go, what do you mean you're locking me in? She goes, now listen, you got all these amazing people out here, and you walk out there and some lower you needs to pull the S out on your chest to show everybody how important you are. And you step on their air hose all day long. You got these amazing people. Let them be amazing. Let them do what they do. Well, but if I'm not out there, they're not going to be able to. She's like, shut up. Here, you're paying me. I was paying her like $15,000 a month to do business coaching for me. And she's like, look, you want to take this advice or not? She goes, you get 7 1-hour meetings with these 7 people once a week. You can talk to them for 1 hour. And I thought, okay, great. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write all these lists about, I want them to do this. I want them to do this. I want them to do this. And you know what it turns out to be now? I spend an hour with them talking about who they are and what they're up to. That the people actually learn how to do their, our VP of construction, he knows construction better than I do all day long. He runs his people and does a great job with it. Him and his team, they know how to produce money and wealth, right? Our accounting team, I can spend time with her and really get to know about her family. And what I get to do is do some spot checking on a couple of ideas that we're going to work on or create some new ideas or vision for us to move forward. But I'm not there nickel and diming every decision with them. I did that. And the truth was, it was the power of me. And the company it was completely bottlenecked by that. And I think that's one of the best examples I ever had was stay in your office and let those people be magical.
Yeah. I mean, that's it's also exhausting. I mean, it's completely exhausting when you're the one that they have to rely on, like, hey boss, where do you want us to park the trailer at? It's like, figure it out, guys. Like, just use some deductive reasoning and figure it out. Like, you don't need to. I mean, obviously they're doing that because you trained them to call you for every problem and every scenario. But that's where you get that frustrated, small business owner in any capacity. It's like, because they're coming to you with every problem because you trained them to come to you with every problem.
That's right.
So now start training them to not, so one of the things you can do is a kind of a practical guide. If this is you listening, is if your guys are calling you and they say, hey boss, we got this problem, what do you want us to do? You just say, well, if it was your company or if you were in charge, what would you do? Well, I might do this or I might do that. Okay, those are good ideas. What else? Is there any other options that you might do? Well, maybe we could do this. Okay, well, which one do you think is the best option? I think maybe this is the best option. Sounds good. Run with it. Right. And then you just start training them to start thinking through the problems themselves. Now there's a caveat to that. Like, you have to create goalposts, or like in the military, we have on the range, you have our left and right lateral limits. It's like, don't shoot left of this and don't shoot right of this. You got to create those lateral limits in your business for your team of what those are. But as long as they're operating within those limits, then you really shouldn't be the one that's making the decisions for them on a daily basis.
No, what's kind of been fun for me now is once you created those lateral posts, now I can go back into the teams now. I've been doing that again. I've been really involved with team and process driving again, beginning of the year, kind of going back through process. And because I'm not in the day-to-day minutia with them, they're now when I come in, there's like a different excitement about it, right? I get to be with them in a different way where we can look at the process they're working on, the ideas that they're doing. And the truth is, I'm really great at that stuff, right? That's what makes the entrepreneur, right? You have a vision and you have a way of seeing an idea or a path. And because I don't have all the layers of the day-to-day crap that, that are there, I can be with them in a different way and they can see it a little bit clearer than they do with their boss or the people that they work with directly. And I think that's what becomes the majesty of a great leader, is that you go bring back to them a vision and ideas and something that, great leadership for me has always been about taking, there's a billion ideas on the planet and being able to bring that solution to every problem. The lower me, when I was a younger leader, because of all the drama in my life, all the stuff that was happening, all the confusion I would bring to the office, I had a small peephole of ideas of things to do. Today, because I can stand back from it and I'm not in those hour decisions with people, I can see things bigger and bring bring the billions of ideas to a solution. And ultimately, I think that's what the gift of a great entrepreneur is, that there's great leaders have access to the billions of ideas on the planet. And, when I bring the mess, or Anthony that was a mess, or the all my life drama there, that pipeline of ideas shrinks pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's actually, I mean, that's real. When you are stuck in the day-to-day task, you lose the division that you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah.
as an entrepreneur, you're a leader, you're supposed to, I mean, really, you should have planned time for just visioning, for just thinking, for just creative thought and stuff. And when you have to be on the tools every day and you're running around job site to job site and you're taking calls and doing all this stuff, you get so focused on just trying to accomplish the day's work that you have no time for vision, no time for planning, no time for creative thinking. And it actually, what happens is you start to lose sight of what you wanted to create. So you lose the vision. It's like, here you are when you start, but then as you get more and more and more, you got a pinhole, and then you start to get depressed. You start to get unmotivated because you lost the vision. And so it's in your best interest to really try to get rid of all of the jobs that, are holding you back in your business as much as possible. I love Dan Martell's book, Buy Back Your Time. He talks about that. I love that concept of like, you should only be doing the highest level. And if it's under your certain dollar amount, you should be hiring someone else to do that. And I agree with that 100%.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how I almost believe that why we do that, why we go into those, jump into those projects, the truth is it's comfortable, right? Here, the things I don't want to do, I can find a million distractions. I'll give you a great example. I hate going in accounting. You sit in there and have to do finances and go through the budgets and forecasting and going through job profitabilities. And it used to, like, literally, as soon as they start talking, I'd be like, wow.
Yeah.
I could feel myself getting tired. I'd find a million distractions to go in there. Yep. But as a leader, it's important for me to understand the company finances and really be able to look at it, forecast where we're going, and then really set the guideposts. Those are the guideposts you're talking about, right? Being able to look at a team and go, look, here's what your team cost us, and here's what we need to do in revenue for you guys to be a valuable part of our company. And right, but at the end of the day, and also sharing that wealth. For me, I'm a big believer in people that work hard should share in the wealth of an organization. And I really do believe most entrepreneurs would do that and create more wealth for the people that are doing that in their company if they could see that, right? But the idea of like, I'm going to pay people bonuses and I'm barely making any money, and I'm like, right. Oh my God, you can't see it when you're playing desperate contractor.
Yeah. And to kind of bring it back full circle to what we were talking about. So one of the reasons why we like to do all those things is because it's a pat on the back, right?
Yeah, that's right.
When there's chaos in our business and we swoop in, like you said with the S, and we solve all the problems, man, don't we feel awesome about it? Look at me. Look how awesome I am.
Right.
I still remember, Anthony, I used to, when I got into construction, I actually started out as a superintendent for a local developer. And I still remember to this day, one specific day where it was just chaos of like phone calls and problems and everything was going wrong. And I was just solving problems all day. And at the end of the day, I remember going, man, I did awesome today. Like, this is just such an awesome day, right? Because it was all about me solving problems and it made me feel so well. And so I was having a conversation with another client this week, and he was talking about stuff, and through the conversation came out like, he has, somewhat ADD, and a lot of guys have this. A lot of entrepreneurs have ADD, but it's like we love being the firefighter. We love putting out the fires, but the problem is that we're also the arsonist. Like, we also set the fires, right? And so
Amen.
that comes back full circle to the accountability, right? Where it's 100% your fault because you are setting the fires in your business, and then on the back end you get to put them out, and that makes you feel good. But that's, eventually you're going to run out of stuff to burn, like to set fire to. So you have to actually try not to be the arsonist.
Yeah. But
be the fire chief, be the captain or whatever, not the actual firefighter.
And if you're going through that, if you're listening to this podcast right now and you're like, these guys don't know what they're talking about. Look, I've been doing this for 28 years and I've coached and worked with coaches just, like Brad, all the entrepreneurs you work with, it's almost the exact same story every time. Yep. It's not,
not unique.
You're not unique. It's the same stuff. By the way, we've all done it, including I still go through it. I go through it every day. I still find myself being the arsonist, and we're breaking the $85 million a year mark and on the way to $100 million mark. And we worked in all 50 states, and go and I think to myself, oh, by now we should. What's really funny is you go through this place where you're like, I should be better than I am now, and you're like, 10 years ago, I would have begged you for the company I have today.
Yeah.
Right. And there's still days when I get up and I think to myself, I can't believe I feel like an idiot. I'm like, I'm messing this up, or someone leaves, or something happens. And we still every day get up and have these problems every single day. And I don't know that they'll ever go away 100%, because I think that's part of business, is that your growth comes with an idea that you're growing. And to get to growth, you have to walk through that chasm of broken glass, of barbed wire and fire. That's what it takes to grow a business. You've got to be willing. I think Elon Musk says it best. You got to be willing to chew glass and look over the abyss every day to be an entrepreneur, right? Because if you're going to be the guy growing it, if you're going to be the guy at the top of a company growing it, nothing comes to you that isn't on fire and burnt already, right? By the time you get to solutions, everybody else couldn't solve them. Now you're kind of at the top dealing with the ones that everybody else couldn't solve. So it's going to come that's part of the job. And I used to ask God to say, hey God, could you make this easier? Today I know better than that. Today I ask him, hey God, could you make me stronger?
Yeah.
Right? Could you give me that ability to know that, all right, even on my worst days, you're going to survive, and there's some sort of gift that you're giving me. I'm not sure I understand it, and I don't mean to get all spiritual on people, but there's some knowing that whatever I'm going through, there's a reason for it. And I've survived all of my worst days. And I believe that all of us can see it. If we could see that together, if each entrepreneur could tell that to each other, hey, brother, you're going to be fine. Or, hey, sister, you're going to be fine. You're going to go through this. It's going to feel like hell as you're going through it. But the truth is, you're going to learn. And the gift of that learning is going to propel you and the group and the families of people that you support forward there.
100%. Yeah, I agree with everything you said. Yeah, I mean, entrepreneurship is not for everyone. And, and by the way, there's nothing wrong with being an employee either. Like, even if you try to, and you want to go be a project manager and make a good life and a good living, there's nothing wrong with that either. It's not for everyone. Entrepreneurship is not for everyone. That's for sure.
Hey, something I think you do a great job of in your coaching is your sales training. I know you've got some really amazing techniques that you do. And when I listen to you, by the way, folks, make sure you're listening to his podcast. It's called Hammer and Grind Podcast. You've got to go check it out. Brad, you've got a great way of looking at the whole sales process, the 9 questions that you ask, the pre-qualification stuff that you do. Let's talk a little bit about that, because I think entrepreneurs, pay attention to this one, because I think this is something that is real valuable for every company that's out there.
Well, so sales is interesting. It's an interesting topic for contractors. And I was 100% this guy. We think that it's all about quality. As long as we produce a quality work, that's all that matters. So in other words, I can be rough around the edges. I can be, kind of a bad person, kind of rude, kind of mean. As long as, like, you're not hiring me to, to be your best friend. You're hiring me to build a house. Like, why does that matter? The reality of it is, in sales, is like, it is all emotion. It's 100% emotional. And so what's interesting about construction is, like, we have the pictures that prove that we can do quality work, right? But the reality of it is that you're actually selling the job before ever producing it. And so the quality of the work gets the phone to ring. If they see a nice picture of something you did, it might get the phone to ring, but it's not going to sell the job if you're, pardon my French, if you're a dickhead. Like, it's not,
yeah, right.
It's not going to work, right? And so a lot of contractors, the craftsmen, they say, why does it matter? It's all about the work. And as long as I get in front of them and, I can show them samples of my work and I can show them pictures, that's all that matters. And the reality of it is, people buy based on emotion. But we buy based on emotion, and then we use logic to justify the emotion, right? And I like to use the example of, like, there's no reason for a convertible car to exist. Like, you don't need a convertible. Like, logically, there's no reason for a convertible. But if we buy a convertible, what do we do? Well, it's going to get the sun in my eye, the wind blowing in my hair. I love the way it makes me feel, and I love this and this and that. Those are all emotional decisions that you're buying in the car. Now, I don't care if you own a convertible. That's great. But logically, there's no reason to own one. So that's just a simple, silly example. Whenever you're dealing with a customer, they're buying people because of how it made them feel.
That's right.
And so the sales process is an emotional process. It's not a logical process. And so when you're saying we're the best contractors, we have the highest quality, that's what's expected. Like I don't go to a restaurant, a 5-star restaurant, and then expect to get cold food. Like that's just expected, right?
Sure.
But I guarantee you, if I go to a 5-star restaurant and the food is amazing, but the waiter or the server that served me is terrible, I have a bad experience, right? I don't go back to that restaurant, even though the food was amazing, the product, I don't go back because the service was terrible. And that's no different than selling.
I mean, the part about being a contractor that's really tough, same thing with fine dining. Look, in fast food, you got, 10 minutes to piss somebody off. In fine dining, you've got 2 hours to piss somebody off. You build a house for someone, you got 6 months of pissing somebody off. I mean, anywhere along the way, you can say something so inappropriate that you'll ruin a relationship. And I think that's one of the ones where, but I'm building them a beautiful house. I got it. But look, if you're a jackass and they don't want to ever deal with you again, they're going to tell that to their friends because, they're afraid, right? No one wants to go through the drama of that. And, at the end of the day, they want someone they can count on. And when you strike fear in them by the way we talk to people or the way we act around people, right? And you could look at it and go, all right, how could my thoughts, actions, and behaviors be causing the relationship I'm having with a customer? Now, there are customers out there who are, just aren't very well organized or are frustrating to deal with. And that's, therein lies your gift to focus them and bring them down a path. Oftentimes we build these fancy restaurants that are for these great chefs, right? These amazing, beautiful, beautiful restaurants, but they'll bring on these designers that are just, they're and their designs are amazing. They're beautiful. And the chefs are great people. But keeping them both going down a path so that at the end of the project, we're not over budget and our times are trashed is where I'm accountable for, right? And you sit there and go, well, it's all their fault and that lady's fault and this, or I could look at it and go, all right, how could I help them go down something that, it could go any way it wants to if I let it go there. How can I hold ourselves accountable? I could go back to Jocko Willink and go, all right, how could I be accountable for keeping them all going down the path together? Give them foresight, understand I need decisions here in order to order stuff here, to have it delivered on time, to make an inspection or a delivery or whatever we need to prove it. I need to be able to create that foresight and language and paint the picture for them. And ultimately, when I can step back and say, look, they don't have the knowledge we have, right? We as contractors hold the knowledge of, in order to keep this going down a path, I've got to keep it on the path. And, I've got a client who's, beautiful. Look, without them, I don't get to build the fancy restaurants. Without the designer, I promise you, I was just doing a restaurant here in the West Loop of Chicago, one of the most beautiful restaurants ever done. The designer, she would walk in with her dog in 15 minutes and she would yell at everybody, but she built the most beautiful restaurant I've seen in a long time. It's gorgeous. That's a different personality than we are, right? And you could walk into a meeting and go, F them and forget that and blow it all up. Or you can take on and say, look, I have to deal with the creative. How do I keep the creative going down a path? I can speak to, hey, I'm going to send some stuff over to you and, give them advance notice. So we started really working on, hey, you're going to pick an idea or a solution, or you want this thing done. We're going to go get it and get you specifications for it and samples. And we're going to have it to your office by Tuesday. We need the answer back by Thursday. Is that possible? Great. Now you give them some guidelines to work with. And they make a commitment. Now on Friday, I can go order that stuff and meet my schedule, right? But if I don't give them that in the beginning and just lob it over to them unannounced, it haphazardly, they may be traveling, they may be, I don't set an expectation that we all can work with. It's just not workable.
Yeah, and that's the same in sales too, where it's all about communication, right? That's really what it's, at the end of the day, And just so your listeners know, like I work with residential contractors, remodelers, landscapers, general contractors. It still applies across all industries. Like communication, effective communication is the most fundamental skill that you need to learn as a leader and specifically in sales. And there's a saying that I love, and that is, your customers don't go to customer school. They don't know how to be a customer, right? Like you have to teach them how to be your customer. And one of the things that we do and that I teach with contractors is we don't do free estimates. I mean, that's the biggest waste of time. Now, I realize in commercial, industrial, sometimes you have to do bid on jobs and stuff, but specifically for residential, like you don't need to do free estimates anymore if you do it correctly. Now, when I say that, a lot of times I get pushback. It's like, there's no way, nobody charges for estimates. There's no way it's going to work. It wasn't working in my town, my city, my trade, blah, 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 blah. All excuses, right? The reality of it is it works if you effectively communicate the value that you're bringing to the project and that relationship. Then people will happily pay you to come out and do the estimate. And so we always do a discovery call or whatever you want to call it. I don't care. But it's like we do a phone call first to learn about their project. We ask them the 9 questions that you were alluding to earlier. And we just try to get an idea about their project. And we're just trying to understand what they want on an emotional level. We're trying to figure out what's the motivation behind doing this project. Oftentimes, and this blows people's minds, I have clients, I've done it myself, but I have clients that will sell a $90,000 remodel project over the phone and not once talk about any spec of the project. They don't know what color tile it is, what size, what kind of material, none of that. They'll sell the project over the phone, and then all they're doing is going out there and meeting with them, getting the measurements to put the final estimate together. But the project's pretty much already sold. I'd say it's 95% sold. It's yours to lose at that point. And it blows contractors' minds because it's like, well, I got to go out and look at the project. I have to walk the job site. I have to get measurements. I have to go back and spend 4 hours putting together this amazing proposal only to find out that they're not going to hire me. And like that is, to me, and I did this for many, many years. To me, that is the most insane way to run a contracting business.
Folks, what we're going to do is we're going to take those 9 questions that you need to know about sales. We're going to put those down the bottom. You'll have those down in the description for you. And I want you to really look, if you want to grow your business, if you're a contractor and you're looking to grow your business, finding Brad and having him come on board and helping you grow that, finding that insight, this is the kind of stuff where you're going to spend a couple bucks to do it. But that money right there, every coach I've ever been with has multiplied in spades the amount of growth that I'm able to do. Finding a great coach like Brad gives you the ability to have somebody on your side that you can trust, that's outside of you. Because listen, leaders, it's tough, right? It's tough you can't always trust what our heads are telling me. At least I don't, right? Sometimes that Fred in my head, he makes some stories that aren't really true. And I need that outside coach to support me. Not that I have to, it's always that way, but look, once a year, if I bring a coach in to kind of look over what I'm doing, it's worked out in spades. And for me, I've had multiple coaches throughout the time I've been in business, and every one of those have bring some sort of gift to it. The way we run people, the way we run our finances, the way that we do our practices. So look, if you're looking for a great coach, Brad, we'll have all of your contact information down below. It'd be great to do that. If you want to give them your website or your ability to contact you, what's the best way to contact you?
Yeah, you can go to my website. It's the Hammer and Grind podcast. That's the easiest way to find it. I did also recently write a book. It's called The Contractor Profit Blueprint. Right. And I have a website that's the same title, thecontractorprofitblueprint.com. You can buy that book, and love to give your guys the free copy of the ebook. So I can give you a coupon code. We can put that in there as well, so they can get Perfect. That book for free. And then we'll have I call it the no BS guide to eliminating tire kickers. And it has those 9 questions in there, as well as a bunch of other stuff too. So we'll have a link for that in there as well.
It's awesome. I'm grateful for the time that we have together. I really do believe that coaches like you help really grow our opportunities, and do stuff that you couldn't see yourself doing, right? For those of you that are stuck in some belief that this is just the way it is, I have to put up with it. It's not the way it is. There are other ways of doing what you're doing that'll grow. Now, I'm not going to tell you that problems will go away, because growing ideas come with problems. And that's the gift of being a great leader, is that you're able to deal with those problems, heads up, being vulnerable, being there for it. But what you are going to do is have a gift of knowing that you've got a coach by your side, and they're going to support you as you take those steps, and the ground will be there when your foot hits it. So Brad, thanks for being on the show.
Anthony, thank you so much. I had a blast. Appreciate it.
Thanks. All right. As always, audience, thank you very much. Last week we broke the 50,000 subscribers on YouTube. It was amazing, right? But I noticed that a lot of you guys made it to the end. There's still, a bunch of you, over 30% of you that made it to the end of the podcast that weren't subscribers. If you could take a second right now and like and subscribe, it means the world to Alyssa and Joe and myself, all the people that put the show together. We work tirelessly of finding great guests like Brad to come on here. If you could take a second and just like and subscribe now, that would mean the world to us. As always, we're grateful for you being here. Thanks.